Hey, what's up, y'all? Hey, guys, it's Matt Ramsey. Welcome to the live stream. I want to answer everybody's burning singing questions today. We always have a really great time, helping singers out. So, any questions that you have about singing voice, no topic is off limits as long as it's about the singing voice. And just a quick reminder, we actually just reopened enrollment for our premium singing program, 30-day Song Master. Every single month, I upload a new song tutorial that trains a specific vocal skill, such as singing with vibrato or belting or what have you. And then basically, you actually record yourself singing that song, send it in to me for personalized feedback. It's an amazing thing that you can check out. And we're offering it right now. We just reopened enrollment for it. So definitely check it out. And just a quick apology, I am still recovering from a cold, so if I sound extra nasal today, that's why. So thank you guys so much for being here. What's up, Mo? What's up, Gavin? What's up, Afonso Duarte? Afonso Duarte from Portugal is joining us. Hey, what's up, Afonso? Hey, Caden. What's up, everybody? Great to have you guys here. Super excited. Go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that was concerned or showed concern about my girlfriend Francesca. She appeared on the live stream last week, and she's going to hate that I talk about this. She appeared on the live stream last week. Hey, Diane from Toronto. And she has kind of an enlarged thyroid. The thyroid is like this gland that sits inside of your throat. And we actually had a registered nurse who watched the stream last week and was like a little bit worried, which was kind of funny because she was actually getting an ultrasound on her thyroid because it had been a little while since she got her last one, and she's totally fine. And she does have just a pronounced enlarged thyroid. And so a registered nurse saw it and was like a little worried, like, oh, you guys should get that checked out. But she's totally fine. So I appreciate everyone's concern for that. Go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. I'd love to see all of that. Now, YouTube has all this stupid stuff. God, YouTube gets stupider and stupider with these live streams. It has like this little emoji thing in the bottom right-hand corner, so I can't see the entire question. So like I have to see like the second part of the question. Okay, so Genki says, "Hello, I'm a tenor and choir. Is it always necessary to sing from the diaphragm?" Okay, so this is something that a lot of singers hear about. You have to sing from the diaphragm, you have to sing from your belly, all these different things. Anytime you are singing, you're singing from the diaphragm. The diaphragm is just a muscle that's located at the bottom, kind of attaches to the bottom of your lungs. And when you inhale, it actually starts to contract a little bit, and that actually draws your lungs full of air. So if you can kind of imagine that my lungs are on top of this, as I push this down, it pulls the lungs full of air. The lungs fill up with breath. And then as you sing, the diaphragm naturally relaxes a bit. And so I think it's important to say that when you inhale, the diaphragm is going to contract anyway. So technically speaking, you're always singing from the diaphragm. But the heart of this question and what all these vocal coaches are trying to tell you is we want to make sure that we're taking what I call a low breath or a diaphragmatic breath. All people call it different things. But basically that means that as you're about to sing, when you inhale, the only part of your body that's moving is your stomach. Your stomach is coming out, and that's actually showing that your diaphragm is engaging properly. So rather than singing from here, lifting up your shoulders and all this stuff, instead, if you're singing from the low belly or you're singing from the diaphragm, that basically just means that you're inhaling in a very effective and efficient way. So rather singing from up here, where you can even hear that my voice is a little bit more tight than when it's right here, that makes a big difference. So is it always necessary to sing from the diaphragm? I think it's a really helpful habit to get into, of always taking that low belly breath. Erwin says, "Hi, Matt." Hi, Erwin. "Can lifting weights or calisthenics negatively affect singing by creating unnecessary tension in the neck or abs?" That's a really good question, Erwin. I haven't actually heard that one before, because most people ask like, hey, are calisthenics and exercise good for your singing voice? And they are, because anything that's going to like increase the blood flow and the circulation and all that stuff in your body is going to be good for your singing voice. However, your question is like, hey, like if I'm like tensing like this all the time, or like really holding my stomach really tight in the gym, is that going to negatively affect your singing? I don't really see that as being a big issue, but here's one thing that I want you to check, Erwin. The next time that you're singing, just take your hand or your palm or make a fist, and I want you to just gently feel your abdomen as you're singing. Now, it shouldn't feel like rock hard abs when you feel it. We don't want to be singing with six-pack abs, meaning that I'm keeping my abs really tight, because as you can hear, just engaging my abs is actually adding more tension to my throat. And when I relax them, you actually heard that my voice also relaxed. So good question there. So to answer your question, I don't think it's going to negatively impact it, as long as you're not taking all the bad habits from your lifting and applying it to singing. Good question. So Caden said, what would you classify tenor range? Because my teachers are titling me a barotenor because I have a tenor tone. My current range is D2 to D5. Well, if you have so vocal range is not the only thing that dictates what voice type you are, right? So vocal range is just one of the indicators of the vocal type or the vocal classification. Instead, way more important to me, at least, and a way better kind of indicator of your voice type is what we call vocal weight. And that's kind of what you're implying there when you're saying that you have a tenor tone, right? So you can hear my voice is pretty bright, it's pretty high. I'm not talking like down here with a ton of vocal weight. And if I was, that would sound really silly, just like it just did. So I would definitely call you a tenor, especially since you can sing D2 to D5. D5 is pretty darn high. There's lots of baritones that can sing that high, but way more important is the vocal weight. Now, just a quick reminder, we actually just reopened enrollment on 30-Day Songmaster. It's the only singing course out there where every single month we learn to sing a new song that trains a specific vocal skill. So like for 1 month it's going to be vibrato, the next month is going to be belting, and every single month is kind of cumulative and builds on the last one. And the coolest thing about 30-Day Songmaster is like after you've had a chance to practice that song for a little bit, then you're actually going to submit a recording of yourself singing it to get my personalized feedback. So definitely check that out. We just reopened enrollment on it right now, but we keep it very limited just because, it takes so much personalized feedback. Amin says, hi, I wanted to start singing at 20 years. Male, by the way. What would I do to be a professional singer, and what exercises should I do to expand my vocal range? So, Amin, it doesn't really matter when you start. 20 years old is still plenty young to start doing your vocal training. I didn't actually start doing vocal training until I was like 24 or 25. Even though I'd sung a little bit in choir, I'd sung a little bit in musical theater in high school, I didn't actually do any vocal training until I was 25. So in terms of expanding your vocal range, that's a lot of really great exercises to help you with that. Maybe the lip trill, maybe the maybe the gee, maybe the nay, nay, nay. Those are the ones that just come to mind off the top of my head. You can definitely check out my Expand Your Range Fast course. It's an amazing course. It's our best-selling course, actually, and it gives you a lot of fantastic exercises to help you expand your vocal range. I'll drop the link here in just a second. But the most important thing is that you're working on exercises that counter whatever your singing tendency is, right? So if you're someone that's pushing up your chest voice, I'm going flat on that top note. So maybe doing a would actually help you hit that high note better, because it's decreasing your tendency or your desire to pull up to that top note. Stephanie Hernandez. Good morning, Stephanie. She says, I just wanted to thank you for the tips you gave me on your last live Q&A with using my head voice. It's my pleasure, Stephanie. That's why I do this. Cheryl TV says, I have tonsillitis, both hard to sing because the tonsillitis ball are blocking, not blacking, but blocking in your throat. Should I remove the tonsils? A piece of advice, please. So, Cheryl, I actually had my tonsils removed when I was pretty young. A lot of kids do. If they're going to have them removed, they tend to do it pretty young. As you get older, I've heard that the recovery is really, really tough. It's one of the harder recoveries. That's what I've heard. I don't actually have experience with this personally because mine came out when I was so young. So I would just say be careful. Think about, the pros and cons of that. I know that there's a lot of people that just choose to keep their tonsils, like even though they get tonsillitis more often and maybe some more ENT issues more regularly, but they choose to keep them because the surgery is expensive and the recovery is so tough and all of that stuff. I know lots of people who have their tonsils and still sing beautifully. So great question. Equilipsic says equilipsic, maybe. I'm currently trying to develop my mixed voice or find it. I've heard so much about compression, but whenever I try it, I strain and pull my chest voice sort of, or just flip. Any advice? Great question. So here's the thing. I'm just going to call you EQ. So EQ, the point here is when you hear about compression, excuse me, that means a lot of different things to different singing teachers. And so I think that term is really loaded. It's a really, really loaded word to use because technically compression just means the vocal folds coming together and vibrating. So whenever I'm even talking right now or holding a note, I'm adding compression to my voice. Am I adding a lot of compression or a little compression? It's all on a spectrum. It's all on a scale. See, we're all special. We're all on the spectrum of compression, that is. So when you're saying that you're pulling your chest voice whenever you go up towards those higher notes, which means that you're probably not doing something right. Okay. Which means that you may need to do some exercises to actively reduce how much you're pulling that chest voice. So kind of like I was talking about a second ago, maybe doing a or a even though that's a really nasal sound, it's actually helping my vocal cords thin out so that I can make that transition up to the head voice and back down. Now, the other point that you were talking about is like kind of discovering the head voice. And I just wanted to say that the opposite of pulling up the chest voice is flipping or, going to falsetto. Having that big break in your voice, right? Now, the other thing that I'll say is that if your main tendency is to push up towards those top notes, you may actually have to flip up to falsetto for a little bit just to teach your voice that it's okay to go up to your head voice. And by the way, that actually is a really, really great kind of a really great transition because we just reopened enrollment on 30-Day Songmaster, and this month we're actually covering the mixed voice very, very extensively. So I'm actually assigning a song that teaches singers mixed voice, and they're going to practice it. And then on the 20th of the month, they're going to send in a recording of themselves singing so that they can get feedback from me about what's holding them back. So it would be a pleasure to listen to you sing and give you a little bit of feedback about some exercises that you can do. So really, really great question. Let's see. Annabeth says, "Hi, Mr. Ramsey. I love your singing tips." Thank you, Annabeth. I just wanted to ask, how can you tell if you're in mixed voice rather than chest or head voice? Okay, mixed voice is a lie. It doesn't really exist. It's not something that we can actually study in terms of like we're actually looking at the vocal folds and saying, oh, that right there, that's what mixed voice looks like. Really, there's chest voice and there's head voice and there's nothing in between. And I know that that's controversial, but here's the thing. It doesn't really matter because what really creates the sound of the mixed voice is having a really smooth handoff between the chest voice and the head voice and making the head voice sound really, really strong. So it's kind of like, I don't know how well this is going to work out today because like I said, I'm still a little bit sick. But if I do a nay, 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 nay. Nay, 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 nay. Where am I actually switching over to my head voice? It's kind of hard to tell, or maybe it's easy for you to tell because I'm still sick. My voice isn't holding together super well in those top notes. But the most important thing is being able to just disguise that break and really build up the resonance into those top notes so that it doesn't sound like a big switch. So in other words, if you're going, that's not really mixed voice, even though you're going up to your head voice on that top note. It's more about that. Where is the switch? I'm making it hard for you to hear. Great question. So happiness says, why does my mixed voice sound nasal sometimes? Well, everything that I'm saying and singing sounds nasal right now because of my nose being stuffed, but excuse me. So happiness, sometimes the mixed voice sounds really nasal to people, even if it's not. Oftentimes, one of the biggest things that makes nasality or makes mixed voice sound nasal is raising the larynx. So this is like the back of my throat. And if I raise my larynx, then I'm shrinking the amount of resonating space that I have in my voice, which means that the tone has to go into my nasal passage. So if I'm not pushing it out my mouth enough, by keeping my larynx a little bit more relaxed, then it's naturally going to go through my nasal passage instead. Red Gamer, hey, what's up, Red Gamer? Says, how does a new or wannabe singer gain confidence on stages and public performances? This is a really good question, and it's different for everybody. So I went balls to the wall when I was 23 or so. I was living in San Francisco, and I just quit my job in advertising, and I was determined that I was going to do something that I really loved. And for me, that was singing. And so I started writing and playing songs for the first time. But every time I got up on stage at like an open mic or whatever, my voice would just shake and I would tremble and my voice would just fall apart. And so what I did was I started going into the train stations in San Francisco and I would just start playing and I would play for hours there, usually 2 hours at a time, which usually worked out to about 20 to 30 songs. And sometimes I would repeat them. But there'd be hundreds of people passing me by, and some people would, smile. Some people would throw things. There's a great story in my book about when someone threw a can at me while I was singing. But the whole reason that I did that was to kill my fear of performing in front of people. And the way that I was able to do that was I would perform, but it wasn't like the stakes were lower. Like people would just walk by, they're on their way to work, and occasionally they would give me a little bit of a tip. It was nice. I'm going to mute myself so I can blow my nose. Hold on. Working on quite the sinus infection right here. It's wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Makes for really great singing. So, let's see. Warp Boy, and by the way, I'm skipping over some people that have asked a lot of questions in the past to make sure that the new people get some attention. So Warp Boy says, I'm a high tenor and I'm trying to expand my range down. I have so much trouble singing low notes, even when they're not even that low at all. What can I do to sing low and not drop my larynx so much? Really good question, Warp Boy. So this is actually something that I see a lot. And by the way, guys, make sure to drop any of your questions in the chat here, especially if you're a newcomer to the channel or haven't asked a question before. So what Warp is talking about is like whenever you go like lower in your voice, it's really typical to like, to drop the larynx in order to hit those lower notes rather than an right? So what's going on there is rather than to I'm trying to keep my voice a little bit more stable, even though that's a little bit of a lower note for me. The important thing is that I'm not dropping my larynx too much. So I'm doing two really important things there. I'm not pushing the volume. So I'm not going, because if I push the volume, that's going to increase the temptation for me to drop my larynx. So instead, I'm just keeping it really easy. So, and like I said, even though that's kind of a low note for me, the important thing is that I'm not pushing it because the more I push, the lower my larynx is going to drop. Now, the second thing that I'm doing there is I'm keeping the vowel small. So rather than and keeping that Instead, I'm shrinking my mouth slightly, which is actually narrowing the vowel. So, so I'm going at the end rather than because the more I open my mouth, again, the lower I'm going to drop that larynx. So, good question there. All right, so Matthew says, hey, quick question. I'm going into a level 3 diploma of musical theater. I'm really tone deaf. How can I fix that? Well, Matthew, I would say you need to take a lesson, probably. You need to, and most importantly, you need to take a lesson with someone that's accustomed to working with people that think they're tone deaf, because a very, very small percentage, somewhere between 2 and 4% of people are actually tone deaf. My guess is if you're going into musical theater, you're probably not actually tone deaf. You probably really like to sing, but the thing that holds a lot of singers back, especially the ones who sing off pitch consistently, is they just haven't coordinated their voice to be able to hit all those different notes in their voice yet. So, for example, a lot of singers, when they go up to higher notes, they sing flat. They're fine on their lower notes. But if you notice, I kind of BS that top note. Yes, I went higher, but I didn't actually match the pitch. Why not? Because a lot of singers are uncomfortable going up to those higher notes in their voice. And for them, going that is actually kind of scary, and they're not comfortable, and they haven't coordinated their voice to be able to do that yet. So they consistently sing it flat. Does that mean that they can't hear the note? No, it just means that they're not comfortable going up to that note. So I would say you really need to find a teacher that's comfortable doing that. And by the way, you can book a 50% off first voice lesson if you want to. No pressure. They're not for everybody because, I do have a very limited amount of time. And so my lessons are on the high side. So definitely check that out if you have the means and the desire to, but no pressure. Let's see. Annabeth says, is there a good way for young singers to learn vibrato without straining? Yeah, Annabeth. So vibrato comes naturally for a lot of singers just through imitation. They'll listen to singers, they'll hear that vibrato, and they'll naturally kind of figure it out. A way that I've found that's really helpful for singers is taking your two fingers, finding your solar plexus. It's about 2 inches above your belly button, or at least it is on me. And when I press into it, you can hear that my voice just kind of shivers and shakes, right? And that's because I'm actually kind of pulsing the solar plexus, which is connected to the diaphragm, which, as we've discussed earlier, is connected to the lungs. And so I'm kind of forcing myself to kind of have that treble in my voice. Now, if I want to train that vibrato, a good way that I found is like an E, is I'll sing up on an E, like that 5-tone E that I did. And then on that top note, I'll actually pulse my solar plexus to get my voice to shake, right? And so that's a really good way of kind of teaching your body what vibrato can feel like. Obviously, we don't want vibrato to all be from the diaphragm, because that sounds really funny too, right? But instead, it's like pulsing the solar plexus actually like helps your voice kind of discover how to do it. Teaches it how to find it on its own. So great question. So Patrick said, I recently watched a video on singing survival show. The contestants plug one of their ears closed when they practice songs. What are they trying to do with that? So first of all, I'm not familiar with that show. Is that something that a lot of people are watching? Has anyone else heard of that? I don't know why I haven't heard of it. Sorry, but I don't watch a lot of like network TV anymore. I just watch a lot of streaming platforms. But if it's popular, it's something that I should know about, probably. But the heart of your question, Patrick, is saying, like, why do people practice like this? It's to get more auditory feedback. I don't personally think it's a great idea, because when you're on stage, you probably don't want to, right, all the time. Like, pull a Mariah Carey. She's pretty famous for always blocking one ear, especially when she sings up to her whistle notes. But the reason that singers are doing that is so that they can hear more of their singing resonance in their head. Not to say head voice, but they can actually, by blocking one ear, they're able to get more of that feedback about what they're actually singing by blocking that one ear. But you can do the same thing by singing into a corner, singing in a corner of the room, because then you're getting feedback from both of these walls in front of you. And by the way, when I say feedback, I don't mean like like an amplifier kind of feedback. I just mean like you're actually hearing yourself. You're actually monitoring yourself. Would be like the recording term for it. It's like when you turn on your monitors, you're able to hear yourself. Good question there. Patrick said, "Oh no, the show isn't called Singing Survival Show. It was a K-pop survival show called Island 2 that was recently concluded." Very cool. Very cool. All right, make sure to drop your questions in the chat, guys. We've got just a few more minutes. Let me see anyone that I left behind. Okay, Caden says, "Do you have any tips on being able to develop your head voice? As I'm currently trying to create a clean transition from mixed to head voice to hit those high notes with a high quality. Thank you." Any tips on being able to develop your head voice? Yes. Work on exercises that are going to start from the top and come on down. So like foo, 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 foo. And basically, what you're trying to do with that foo is you're trying to really clean up the transition between the first note and the second note. So if I go foo, 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 the first one's up in my head voice. That's a B flat 4. The second one is an F4, and that's kind of like in my chest dominant mix. So what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to just clean up that transition between foo, foo, right there, without it being foo, foo, ooh, ooh, and being really tense on that second one. Foo, 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 foo. Good question. EQ says, "What does it mean if I get a fry sound when I do dottal exercises?" Maybe you're meaning glottal exercises, like glottal, glottal. Like to try to smooth out my bridge. Is there anything in particular I can conclude from that? I don't know. I don't really use a lot of vocal fry exercises. I know Brett Manning from Singing Success. He's really crazy about vocal fry exercises. I do not know why. It's not something I used a lot. I've tried it many times, but just doesn't really do a whole lot for me. So the thinking behind using vocal fry exercises, vocal fry, by the way, is which is basically the vocal cords are just totally slack. There's no tension in them at all. And they're just kind of like flopping together. They're literally like bubbling up with the air so that so that sound is vocal fry, and you know why it's called vocal fry, because it sounds like fry. I don't know. And the thinking with that is the vocal cords are just basically totally relaxed in that. And Brett likes to teach, like, if the vocal cords are really relaxed, then it's really easy to pop into your mixed voice, like I haven't really found that to be the case, but then again, I never actually had a private lesson with Brett, so maybe I'm missing something. Personally, I just think that there's a lot better exercises that I've found in my 10 years of teaching that I use to teach people to mix voice. Sarah B says, "I'm a bass 1 baritone, and I'm going to sing the Star Spangled Banner at my high school, but I'm having trouble with hitting a high E4 without flipping into falsetto. I want it to sound better." I guess you're trying to say, "I want it to sound better. Any tips?" So, you want to sing the Star Spangled Banner, huh? One of the hardest songs to sing that any sporting event that you go to, people are definitely going to sing, right? And so the trouble with this is the Rockets' Red Glare. And the Rockets' Red Glare, because that note really so it's an octave and a half song. An octave and a half of range in a song is actually a decent amount of range. It's a pretty wide amount of range. So if you've already pitched it so low, so if your high note is an E4, then that means your lowest note is probably an A2, if I'm getting that right. Oh, say, can you see? And the rocket's red glare. So, my opinion, that probably isn't a great key to sing it in. I understand why you chose to sing it in that key because you don't know how to mix between the chest voice and the head voice yet. And so you're trying to avoid that by just making the high note an E4. It's just that E4 is a really challenging note because it's where most guys are starting their transition. So you'd probably actually be better off by putting the high note in the middle of your transition rather than in the top of your transition. But if this is something really crucial that you have to sing like next week, then by all means leave it in that key. So what you can do is you can just spread the vowel, which is not something that I usually recommend that my singers do, but rockets red glare rather than glare. And the rockets red glare. So you can slightly smile the vowel. And the rockets red glare. The reason that I don't usually do that is because that's going to reinforce a bad habit of yours, probably, which is to push up the chest voice to sing those higher notes. Again, short-term strategy because it sounds like you're going to be singing this really soon, and I don't want you to screw it up. Long-term, you need to learn how to mix those notes. So great question. Guys, I'm going to answer one more question. Just a quick reminder, we just reopened enrollment for 30-Day Songmaster. It's the only singing course or singing program that you'll find where every single month you learn to sing a new song. I assign one for you that will train a specific vocal technique like vibrato or like belting or mixed voice. This month, we're actually learning mixed voice. So this is going to be really good for a lot of you guys that are watching this. And then you practice the song on your own. And then on the 20th of the month, you actually submit a recording of yourself singing it to get my personal feedback, all for one low monthly price. It's an incredible deal. So definitely check it out after I sign it off. So let me see. I'm going to read through these last few questions, figure out which one I want to answer. Genki, I don't really understand your question. Is being octavist a biological talent or can it be reached by a regular tenor and choir? I have no idea what you're asking there. That doesn't make any sense to me. I've never heard of an octavist. Maybe you can explain it to me. There's lots of different singing terms that are used by lots of different people, and they mean different things to different people. So maybe you can answer me what you're trying to figure out there. So Patrick says, when you're a vocalist, what are aspects? This is a great question. What are aspects that make you coachable and easy to work with when collaborating with producers? That's a really good question, Patrick, because I think that a lot of singers they think that if they're just a really good vocalist, then they're naturally going to get called into studio sessions. But the highest rate of people that get called back to studio sessions are people that are cool and easy to work with and who can do the job. Nobody wants to work with an a-hole, right? Even though we have this idea that if you're a talented enough vocalist, then you can be a prima donna. That's really not the way that it works, except for maybe the very, very top 1%. And guess what? Odds are you're not that lucky. So if you're like the 99% of the rest of us, you just have to be a nice person to work with and be able to do the job. So to answer your questions in a very technical aspect, you need to have a decent vocal range. You need to be able to sing from the bottom to the top of your voice and back down without breaking or straining. And you need to be able to do lots of different things with your voice, engage a lot of different vocal effects, such as vibrato, crescendos, sustains, distortion, rasp, adding emotionality to your voice with things like vocal fry, like we talked about before. Breathy singing. Basically, you need to be kind of like a good imitation machine where you can create lots of different sounds. So if someone says, "Hey, give me Aretha Franklin," you need to be able to do that kind of stuff. So listen to lots of famous singers and see if you can emulate what it is they're doing in their own voice. Emma F. I know an Emma F. Hold on. Let me go to their channel. Let me see if this is who I think it is. No, it's not. I don't think so. I was hoping it's Emma Funderburk, but I could be wrong. Emma, if it is you, tell me if it's you. One of my good friends is named Emma. She's a really, really good instrumentalist, and she teaches music lessons here in Austin as well. Okay, so Emma says my voice often breaks when I try to belt higher notes. How can I avoid this? So when your voice breaks, that's a sign that something is going on in your singing voice, that you're out of balance, that the balance between your chest voice and the head voice is not optimal, meaning that you haven't got the right kind of balance between the chest voice and the head voice. So if you're going up to, like, let's say a B flat, this is just in my voice. If I go up to that B flat with 90% chest voice, I'm not really going to make it. If I can balance that with a little bit more head voice, I can avoid that break. So, Emma, to answer your question, finding the right combination between chest voice and head voice, aka mixed voice, or finding the right amount of each to add into your singing is the key to that. With that said, I just wanted to thank everybody for being a part of the stream, for being on here. Just a quick reminder, we did just recently reopen enrollment for 30-day Songmaster. You can check it out at that link. Thank you guys very much for being here, and have a great day. See ya.